is only a temple if you treat it like one. And I realized that I was not treating my body like a temple at all. I was taking all sorts of medications. I had a diet very high in processed foods, and I wasn't living that healthy lifestyle that, you know, should be a temple. And so I totally just kind of had an aha moment and changed everything. I did a huge overhaul on my lifestyle interventions. I changed up my exercise, nutrition, everything. And so what happened was I turned into this sick, medicated kid to now this person. And I implemented a lot of different things along the way, but one of the biggest things I did was what I'm going to be talking about here tonight with, and it made the biggest impact on my life. And that's what we're going to be talking about. And so, who here in general is a fan of implementing simple steps and gaining huge results? You know, steps, a lifestyle that isn't just great and have incredible healing and restorative benefits, but also is free of charge and in fact can save you money in the long run. Sound good? Yeah? Yeah. Well, what we're going to be talking about today is not going to be the latest, you know, fad diet out there. I'm not going to talk to you about the new powerful supplement out there that's promising to make you superhuman. What we're going to be talking about is a proven lifestyle change that has the chance to, you know, really change your life, and that is fasting. And when I talk about fasting, what I'm not going to do is just spit out a bunch of facts about fasting, you know, things backed by research. I'm really going to try to teach you the mechanism of how fasting is working in your body, because I find that when people actually understand how it's affecting your life and how it's affecting your health specifically, it becomes way more implementable. It's way easier to do when you actually understand the benefits, and that's what we're going to be doing. And so, obviously, this is totally counterintuitive to popular culture, right? Because has anyone ever heard of the eat small meals throughout the day to keep your metabolism high? We've all heard that, right? In fact, what is it? Eat every 1.5 to 2 hours, small meals to keep that metabolism elevated, right? So that sounds great. The premise, it kind of makes sense if you think about it. The problem, though, with that is that there was absolutely zero research, believe it or not, supporting that claim, that eating multiple meals throughout the day actually elevated metabolism. Zero research. And you have nutritionists, dietitians. I remember even my professors were teaching this concept. Eat small meals throughout the day. But really it had no bearing in research. And of course their premise was it would make you avoid that starvation mode, right? That starvation mode where your metabolism would drop. I think we got a question about that earlier. And so what they did, though, is they did research. And what they found is they actually found the exact opposite to be true. And this is cool. This was in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And what they found is that your metabolism didn't decrease. It actually increased up to 14% following a 72 to 96 hour fast, which is 3 to 4 days. So what that means, you can actually not eat for 3 to 4 days, and your metabolism will elevate as much as 14%. Didn't decrease, it actually elevated. And we're going to tell you why that actually elevates, you know, in a little bit. But after 72 to 96 hours is then when you start to see your metabolism drop. So there actually is something called the starvation mode, but it doesn't happen after 2 hours of not eating. Instead, it actually occurs 3 to 4 days after your last meal. So it's a very big difference. And so there should be absolutely no metabolism concerns at all. And when your body is going after its energy, so if you stop eating and you're exercising, your body's first going to grab readily available energy in your blood sugar. So it's going to take that blood sugar or blood glucose, and that's readily available for fuel for your body. Once you kind of utilize all that glucose, your body then goes after your stored glucose, which is in the form of glycogen in your liver and your skeletal muscles. So if you're using energy, you're first going to go after your blood sugar. Then your body's going to go after its stored blood sugar in the form of glycogen, and then only once that's over, so only once you use all of that glycogen, all of that stored blood sugar, is when your body will then go after its fat stores and start to break down its fat stores for energy. And so the problem, though, is that it takes about 12 to 36 hours to deplete all of your glycogen. And so if we are constantly eating every 2.5, 3 hours every single day, we're constantly replenishing our blood sugar and our glycogen, and so we're never actually able to get to our fat stores. And so when people are wondering, why am I not losing weight? Well, the reason is because when we constantly are elevating our blood sugar over and over, we're never actually giving our chance to use fat as our primary fuel, which is what we want to do. You know, we have an abundance of energy here and we want to be able to utilize that. But the way that we're eating, a lot of times it's preventing that whole thing from taking place. And so when you fast for a minimum of 12 hours is when you're finally able to allow your body to burn fat. And that's what the goal is, right? Is to burn fat. And fasting itself is a practice of going periods without eating. And this has been around since the beginning of time, especially with things like food scarcity, and also for healing and spiritual practices. You know, and if you think back to our ancestors, they went long times without eating. Whether it was from like a series of unsuccessful hunts, or they just no food available and there was poor harvest, they would frequently go periods without eating. And when that happened, they didn't just shrivel up and die and become weak, you know, and end up dying. No, what they did was they found out that going through periods without eating, they actually stimulated their body's immune system. It stimulated their metabolism and their mental awareness so they could become stronger and more effective as a hunter as a result. So these periods of famine, because they would alternate between periods of feast and famine, these periods of famine actually gave their bodies a survival mechanism to increase their brain function so they could stay effective in hunting. And if you think about it, if they didn't have this built-in mechanism and they went 3-4 days without eating and their metabolism dropped, they would die. And we probably wouldn't be here as a human species right now. And so this built-in mechanism we had actually made them stronger and more resilient as a result. And so if you compare the times our ancestors were living in versus today we're not dealing with any of the stressors our ancestors dealt with. In fact, we live in a world of food abundance. 24/7 around the clock food is available for us. And so our ancestors went through periods without eating because they were forced to. They had no food available. Well, we have food available, but what we need to do is to reap all the benefits of fasting, we now need to be intentional about not eating for certain periods of the day, even though food is available. So we gotta start being intentional about this and forming this into a practice. And the benefits of fasting are numerous. And these are all things backed by research. We're talking about fat burning, brain function, growth hormone production, cellular cleansing or autophagy. It reduces inflammation, stimulates your body's stem cells, improves insulin sensitivity, chronic disease risk, mitochondria, help your body, you know, really be more efficient at producing energy. It lowers your triglyceride levels, eliminates sugar cravings, reduces oxidative stress, and also too, it really helps with longevity and anti-aging. So that's a ton of research out there. We're not going to talk about each one of those benefits specifically. I want to talk about the main points here. And the first one I want to talk about, which many of you probably have a lot of questions on, is fat burning. And I kind of already addressed that point, but remember, your body's always going to go after its most readily available energy source first, which is the sugar and your stored sugar or stored glycogen. And remember, it also takes 12 to 36 hours, it just kind of varies between person to person, to deplete all your glycogen stores after you eat. So, if we're in a fasted state and we're not eating, and what that's going to result in is around 12 hours or so, your glycogen is going to be depleted. And then we're going to break down our stored fat like we mentioned. So fasting is really critical at fat loss. And many of you have probably seen headlines, you know, and things on the media showing how good fasting is for weight loss. And what's cool is when your body starts to break down our fat stores, what it does is it releases these fatty acids into the bloodstream. And those fatty acids then go to the liver and get converted to ketones, which then can be used as an energy source throughout the entire body. And I think someone asked about ketones in particular, and ketones is actually a supplement now many manufacturers are making just to give people ketones, basically to bypass all the hard work and just give your body ketones, hoping that that's going to stimulate fat burning. The problem is, has anyone ever heard of like negative feedback? It's kind of a built-in mechanism. If you have a series of chemical reactions in your body and you have a lot of the product available, well then it's going to down-regulate the pathway to get there because it already senses the products there. So if you're already sensing a ton of ketones here, your body's going to say, wait, we already have energy, why am I going to break down more fat for energy? So it's actually going to halt your body's natural fat burning because you're giving it already the product in your system. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so again, it's really tempting when you see all of these new supplement companies coming out with the next greatest thing. But really, there's no shortcut to nature. You know, there's no shortcut to the hard work to actually get there. And the best way to burn fat is to actually do fasting or a ketogenic diet to increase ketones naturally in your system, which is ultimately going to come from burning your own body's fat stores. Okay, so exogenous ketones can be used as a tool for like brain function, but if your goal is fat loss, usually that's not going to be the best answer because doing it naturally is going to be 100 times more effective. And so one thing that's cool is that if you're in a fasted state, we know that your body's starting to burn through its glycogen and now using fat for fuel. One of the best things you can do to actually amplify all those benefits is to then work out in a fasted state. Because when you're working out in a fasted state, your body's already in that fatty acid metabolism, but when you're working out, you're now increasing your energy expenditure. So now it's forcing your body that doesn't have any blood sugar or glycogen, it's now forcing it to ramp up really, really fast your fat burning capability to give your body enough energy to go through that workout. And just so you know, when you first start working out in a fasted state, it's not that easy. You're gonna feel a little lightheaded. Again, this is a whole new lifestyle. You know, if we're used to eating every hour, of the day, and then we take a little break, and then add working out on top of that into our regimen, it's going to be a little difficult, and it usually takes about 2 weeks to kind of get through kind of the, the lack of energy and lightheadedness because your body's not efficient yet at burning fat for fuel. Once you give it about that 2-week mark, and that's on average, then your body becomes very, very resilient and very, very capable of using its own fat for fuel, and it can do it now at a lot faster rate to support your workout. The next benefit I want to talk about is your brain function, because I think that one of the biggest things anyone would like would be better mental awareness, acuity, better memory and concentration, especially when we know when things like dementia and some just kind of these dementia-like disorders like Alzheimer's are on the rise. Anything to increase brain function and to kind of prevent those is going to be really, really nice. And one thing fasting does to increase your brain function is it increases 3 different components. It increases BDNF, it increases norepinephrine and ketones. And we're going to explain what each one of those are. We already talked about ketones, but BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And what it is, it's a signaling molecule in your brain that actually activates new brain stem cells. So what it does, it actually causes your body's ability to make brand new brain cells, increasing your memory and concentration. And what they found that fasting actually increases BDNF levels by up to 400%. So what that means is that when you're in a fasted state, your BDNF levels are rising, increasing your brain stem cells, allowing you to make brand new brain cells. And so again, when you think about our ancestors again, because these are all built-in mechanisms in our body for a reason, our ancestors would go out hunting and they wouldn't be so lucky and they wouldn't catch anything. But then they're going to be in that fasted state, their BDNF levels are going to be going up. They're going to have a higher mental awareness, building new brain cells, allowing them to stay very, very focused to enable them to be successful on their next hunt, to basically promote their survival. So it's really, really cool when you think about that. And the other thing it does to increase brain function is it increases norepinephrine. And norepinephrine is a hormone that's increased in your body as a response to fasting. And again, it just basically makes you more heightened awareness. So you're going to have increased BDNF, which activates stem cells. You got the norepinephrine, which is going to make you more aware and have basically a higher ability to concentrate. And the last thing is ketones. And we talked about ketones because when you break down your fat stores and produce ketones, ketones are special because they can actually go in there. They're water soluble, so they can go in there and cross your blood-brain barrier, and they're very neuroprotective. And they help your body with memory and concentration as well. So fasting does 3 distinct things to increase your body's brain function. And do you think brain function's important in today's life? Yeah? Yeah? For work, anything, right? I mean, that's huge. It helps you read everything. So this is really, really exciting. The next thing I want to talk about is growth hormone. And growth hormone is also called your fitness hormone, and it really has three major functions: healing, growth, and repair. And a couple other things it does, it's, anti-aging, longevity, it helps you put on lean muscle mass, and it helps with fat loss. So everyone wants a high amount of natural HGH, or human growth hormone. And that's why you see professional athletes or other fitness enthusiasts, they're trying to take shortcuts and actually go and get artificial growth hormone injected in their body because they know it's that powerful. But I say, let's not do that. Let's try to increase our body's natural ability to produce as much natural growth hormone as possible. And what they found is that the hormone insulin and human growth hormone, they have this relationship. They're indirectly related. So if we lower insulin, we upregulate human growth hormone. And insulin is a hormone that basically is elevated in response to eating sugar or carbohydrates. And so naturally, HGH is naturally elevated at nighttime, in the middle of the night. Because in the middle of the night, you're not eating, so your insulin levels are going to be low, which means your HGH levels are going to be high. Does that make sense? So they have this indirect relationship. Now what they found is that when you have low insulin, your HGH levels spike big time, like we just mentioned, and according to the American College of Cardiology, it caused HGH to increase to about 1,300% in women and 2,000% in men. So that's huge. And another thing that increases growth hormone is exercise. So if you're fasted and you exercise in a fasted state, that's like a 1-2 punch to get the most human growth hormone released in your body as possible, having that healing, growth, repair, and anti-aging and longevity benefits. So, sounds pretty good, huh? And all of this is backed by solid research. The next benefit that I absolutely love is autophagy. Has anyone ever heard of that word, autophagy? Yeah. It's becoming more and more popular. A couple years ago, I was lecturing to even a bigger crowd than this, and I saw no hands up, so this is good. The word's coming out. But autophagy, in layman's term, is basically spring cleaning for your cells. It's these bouts of cellular cleansing, if you will. And it's where they recycle dead and broken down cellular proteins, cellular components, like old mitochondria, for example. And so we really want autophagy to be taking place because cleaning your cells and kind of ridding it of dead debris is a very good thing to do. And in your body, you have this mechanism, this built-in mechanism called autophagy, but you also have these growth pathways. And in fact, in our body, we have two major growth pathways, and they are called IGF-1 and mTOR. The names of those are not important. Just know that we have growth pathways and we have cleansing pathways. And you want a very nice, intricate balance between both the growth pathways as well as the cleansing pathways. And I like to make this analogy. It's very similar to healthy bone. Inside a healthy skeletal bone structure, you have two types of cells. You have osteoblasts that are responsible for making brand new bone. And then you have cells called osteoclasts, which are responsible for taking out all the old brittle bone out of there. So you have this healthy balance. Because if you only had osteoblasts working, you would have a ton of bone. In fact, there's drugs that do this. They inhibit your osteoclasts by only allowing osteoblasts to work. So you have a ton of bone, but that quality of the bone is absolute crap. It's brittle, it fractures easy. Sure, on x-ray, there's more density in those bones, but it's all this old, brittle, unhealthy bone. So you gotta have that intricate balance where you take out all the old bone and you build up the new bone. It's a perfect balance, and that's what you want in your body in regards to cleansing and building. Cleansing and basically growing. And so what we found is that when you are eating, you're activating your growth pathways, specifically when you're eating protein or amino acids. So we absolutely have zero problem in today's day and age of activating our growth pathways because we eat enough protein. So our growth pathways are being stimulated to a fair amount. The problem though is we're not stimulating autophagy to balance that out. So we might be building and building and growing, but we're not doing any of that cellular cleansing that's needed. And fasting downregulates the growth pathways because you're not eating protein. And so when you downregulate your growth pathways, you're stimulating that cellular cleansing, that autophagy. And a lot of times I'm asked, you know, Dr. Mike, what's the best detox I can do right now? I really want to do a cleanse. I want this best detox. So basically what they're asking me what's a nice expensive detox they can do, waste their money on to get a nice detox. And my answer is the exact same every time. The best detox is already built into your body, and that's autophagy. That literally no other detox on the market, cleanse, can do all these things that autophagy does to your body. So all you gotta do is fast, where you downregulate those growth pathways, which will upregulate your detoxification pathways, and you're gonna be getting all of those cellular cleansing benefits. And plus, it's free of charge. In fact, it's saving you money because you're not buying food. So not only do you have to not buy an expensive cleanse or do all these crazy protocols, just don't eat. So don't bother with the maple syrup, lemon, and pepper. It's really not needed because you're gonna get the same benefits, if not way more superior, just fasting and taking a break. Because that's what our ancestors did, yep. So when you're in a fasted state, you're suppressing all those growth pathways, and so you're increasing autophagy and cellular cleansing. So those are the main benefits. You know, if you guys have any questions about specific benefits, we'll answer those after the talk. But there's really two types of fasting you could do. There's intermittent fasting and extended fasting. And of course, intermittent fasting, there are so many different protocols that fall under the category of intermittent fasting. But we're going to talk about the most common ones and the ones I recommend and the most popular. And so an intermittent fast is also known as time-restricted eating. And basically it's eating food within a restricted period of time on a daily basis. And so the most common approach is the 16-8 method. And the 16-8 method basically means that you're fasting for 16 hours and you're eating for 8 hours. So as an example, that would mean that you would be only consuming calories between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. or like 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. So you're only eating within an 8-hour window, which means the other 16 hours, 8 of which you're sleeping, you're not eating anything. So that's why they call it the 16-8 method. And an intermittent fast, where you're doing this daily, restricting your eating window, an intermittent fast is great for entry-level fasters who haven't done it before, and it's also great for fat burning, brain function, and for your insulin sensitivity. So if you want those benefits, the intermittent fast is a great fast to do, especially the 16-8 method, which is very common. Then we have things like extended fasts. And extended fasts are anything basically lasting over 48 hours. And this would be more advanced, so you'd want to start off with more intermittent fasts, and then you can kind of work your way up to extended fasts. But extended fasts could be periodic 3, 5, even 7-day fasts. I've never messed with the 7 days, but 5 days I've done, yeah. Trust me, day 6, you want food. Trust me. And the fast that lasts over 48 hours, a researcher, Dr. Walter Longo, he really did a lot of research on there, and he found that when you actually do these extended fasts for over 48 hours, not only is autophagy, that cellular cleansing, severely upregulated during a 48-hour plus fast, but you're actually clearing out dead, damaged cells as well. Because remember, autophagy is cellular cleansing, where it's getting rid of old debris. But then, when you do a longer fast, you're also actually clearing out dead, old cells. So not just the components of the cells, but the cells themselves, which is a process called apoptosis. And in the process of doing that, it also activates your body's own stem cells that help you replace the damaged cells to brand new, robust cells. And so this is pretty crazy because when you're fasting for an extended period of time, over 48 hours, your organs will actually shrink. Has anyone ever done an extended fast? Awesome. So you probably can relate to this. When you do a fast for over 48 hours, over 2 days, you'll notice that you're not going to notice like your liver shrinking, but you actually notice your stomach shrinks. In fact, usually on like on a normal basis, I can stick out my stomach if I wanted to. When I'm fasting over 2 days, it literally is like concave. Like it literally gets smaller. And it's because your body is not using any money digesting its food, not using any energy to digest food. Instead, it's activating all these cellular pathways to clear out old debris. And so it's just going to get smaller and smaller. But in the meantime, you're also activating your body's stem cells. So when it's time to refeed after you end the fast, you're going to elevate those growth pathways. And with that elevated amount of stem cells you get from the fast, you're going to be able to grow and repair to be basically a brand new person afterwards. So really, the extended fast is going to be absolutely superior for autophagy, the cellular cleansing, the apoptosis, the clearing out of old cells, as well as stem cell activation. So it depends on what your goals are. Honestly, if you're looking at it, you really want to do both because both benefits are quite awesome. But there's a researcher named Dr. Eric Verdin. And remember when we talked about how when you take breaks from eating, your body's forced to go after its fat stores for energy. Well, after an extended fast, that's just getting constantly ramped up because you absolutely have zero glycogen by then. And so you're solely dependent on fat metabolism, which is going to increase those ketones. And those ketones, Dr. Eric Verdin found that ketones act as these signaling molecules, having huge anti-aging and longevity benefits. So it's really, really cool. So if you want to do an intermittent fast, those are great for fat burning and things of that nature. But if you want to get that cellular cleansing, that's where the extended fasts are going to come in handy. And so what program should you follow, right? There's a lot. What program should you follow? And like I mentioned, if you want that optimal human performance, you really want to get benefits and reap the benefits of both. And what that would look like in terms of your daily schedule would be doing regular bouts of short-term intermittent fasting, like the 16-8 method, every single day, or 5 to 6 days a week. And then periodically, like for example, what I do once a quarter, I do an extended fast, so I can get those cleansing and stem cell activation benefits. And I think my plan's right there. On a daily basis, I do 16 to 20 hours of fasting. So my first meal on most days is around 12 to 3 o'clock, and my last meal is at about 7. So that's the only time I eat, and so the other times I'm completely fasting. And so that's what I do on a daily basis. Sometimes on Sundays I have a nice brunch that's a little earlier, so I do break it on Sundays occasionally. But 3 to 5 day fasts I add once a quarter to get those cellular benefits and cellular cleansing benefits. So I'm really utilizing both things. And that's my personal plan there. And another common question I get is, how do I get started with this? Because if your body is constantly, dependent on processed carbohydrates for fuel, constantly using its blood sugar and glycogen stores for fuel, your body, and it's been a long time since you've actually been able to use your fat stores, that process is going to take some time. And so the first thing I would actually recommend before you even start fasting is to first eliminate processed carbohydrates from your diet. Those granola bars, the cereals, all of those things, and focus more on a whole food diet. Once you do that, then we can start intermittent fasting, but you're going to start gradually. And so what I recommend is you start with about a 12-hour fasting window, and then once you can kind of handle that, then go to 10, then go to 8. And so what that's going to look like as an example is you're going to start off by doing a 12-hour fast, eat from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. This is just an example. So you're eating 12 hours, you're fasting 12 hours. Once you can kind of get that done for the first few weeks, then bump up your fasting period to 10 hours. So you're going to start eating at 10 a.m. and be done eating at 8 p.m. Once you got that down, then start with the 16-8 method, where you eat from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. and then you're fasting from 8 p.m. to 12 p.m. the very next day. But gradually work up to that. Don't go, you don't need to go right into the 16-8 method. Start off with just a 12-hour fast, then 14, then 16. That's a great way to do it. And with females especially, females seem to be a little bit more, I'm going to say, sensitive to the effects of fasting, meaning that it seems from the research that females actually benefit from not doing a long intermittent fast on a daily basis. Their sweet spot seems to be about a 14-hour fast followed by a 10-hour eating window. So that would be like eating from, sorry, I was doing like math in my head there. So that's where you're going to be eating from like 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. as an example. So I mean that a 10-hour daily eating window seems to be the most beneficial for females, especially if you're, very active and working out and exercising. It seems to be best to support thyroid function. Males don't have a problem, you can go all out. But females, it seems like from the literature, that seems like what it is. Who should not fast? Because fasting is almost good for almost everybody except a few populations, and that would include pregnant women, newborns, young children, high-level athletes. Now, high-level athletes, for one, they're expending so much energy in their training programs, they really require so many calories, and really they need to be eating basically at way more hours, and so fasting would not be appropriate for them. However, in the off-season, fasting would absolutely be appropriate to get all of those cleansing benefits. So, but on the season, when they're really, really working out tough, I would recommend zero fasting for them. People with a history of eating disorders, type 1 diabetics who can't produce insulin, you can do short-term intermittent fasts, but if you're gonna do anything above that, I would recommend getting a fasting coach or, working with a doctor so they can constantly monitor your glucose. And then people with pathological cachexia, which is basically muscle wasting that happens in late stage cancer patients where their body's just wasting away. In early stages of their body wasting, fasting can be great at repairing their body, but in late stages when they're almost down to nothing, fasting would not be appropriate for them.